This is the 2024 GMC Acadia, and in this video I'm going to be covering both this Denali trim as well as the AT4 trim. I'm going to drive both of them, and I'm going to show you the exterior and the interior on both of them, as well as talking about the kind of fuel economy you can expect and then the pricing and how it compares to the competition. But as far as the all-new Acadia here, well, it's a really nicely grown vehicle. They wanted to go back to a larger Acadia after downsizing for the last generation a little bit. So it's now 10.6 inches longer than the last Acadia. It's also 3.2 inches higher, so a much bigger vehicle overall, and that gives you much more cargo space, much more passenger space on the inside. This is really an impressively sized vehicle and exactly what three-row mid-size SUV buyers want these days. And so right up front there though, I love how you have these really cool headlights here with this LED accent with the little lines going through it. It's a really cool look, and you have that very blocky front end here with the bold grille on the Denali trim, especially here where you get lots more chrome. You also get 22-inch wheels here on the Denali versus the smaller wheels you get on other versions of the Acadia here. And overall, it's a very impressive look. I think it makes a statement, it stands out, and looks very classy here in black as well. Going out back, you also have some really nice taillights there with the C shape to them there, and you also have some exhaust tips that are actually inspired pretty closely by the C8 Corvettes, they said, which is kind of a fun little touch there, and a nice back end as well. And one thing I really appreciate about the Acadia that is a key difference from the Chevy Traverse that this is sharing a platform with is that with this you have the D-pillar that's pushed way far back there, so you have a nice and expansive view for the third row, versus in the Chevy there you have a pillar that goes right through the middle of that glass basically. This is a really nice approach, and I think for passengers they may actually prefer sitting in the back of this versus the Traverse. Overall, I think they did a really nice job here on the restyling and resizing of the Acadia here. The interior of the Acadia is also really impressive. Even standard equipment is really impressive. That even though this Denali trim is very nice, it makes you wonder, if you can live with less equipment, because like, for example, you get this massive 15-inch touchscreen as standard, you get the 11-inch digital gauges as standard. A very nice interior. It's just so much roomier and very nice. But as far as the Denali version here, you can see that you get these really nice perforated leather seats which have this cross stitching that's really very nice looking, and the quilting here on the back. They're heated and cooled or ventilated seats here for the Denali here as well, and they're really soft and comfortable seats. Really feel great. The steering wheel is also very nice here on the Denali. It's a little bit of a thicker rim, has the Super Cruise thing here on top, because Super Cruise is now available on all trims of the Acadia, which is really great. I'll talk more about that once we're on the road. But the wheel here just has a few buttons on it. I really like how simple it is on the front of it here. It's not a zillion buttons like a lot of other cars have these days. You do have nice little rocker switches on the back of the wheel along with your paddle shifters, but a really nicely done steering wheel in my opinion. It is also heated, of course, here in the Denali as well. Moving over to the gauge cluster here though, that is one thing that is really nice. It's the 11-inch screen that you get, and I've been seeing this in other new GM vehicles. A lot of them are rolling out this gauge cluster, and in this one it's the same kind of thing where you have a few different views there or themes for what kind of information you're displaying on there, and it looks really nice. I do like the way GMC has skinned this system here so that it has a unique feel and does look really cool. Otherwise, you have an 8-inch head-up display here in the Denalis, which is really great to have and gives you lots of good info in there. And then coming over to the middle here, like I said, 15-inch touchscreen. I really like how you have a nice large volume knob integrated right into the middle of it, although I wish there was a power button in the middle of it. Unfortunately, there isn't, so you just have to crank it down if you want to mute the audio, which is a little bit annoying. It's a perfect spot right in the middle for a power button. They don't have it for some reason, but otherwise this system is really great. It uses the Google built-in software, so it has native Google Maps, which is really quick and snappy, and if you're signed into your Google account, you can have all of your search history and your frequent places and all that pop right up and carry over from your phone to the car, your computer, whatever. It's all going to be synced up, which is really nice. And thankfully, since this is a gasoline powered GM vehicle, you do have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It's wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto. Really great you have that, and nice to see it in this system since all the EVs have foregone the smartphone integration, sadly. But you have that. You also have your usual Bluetooth audio streaming. All those things are also Amazon Alexa built in. You do have the Google Assistant if you want to use that, and even tuning radio stations, things like that is nice and easy to do. And this is also where you'll see your up to 9 camera views you can get with these, and it's going to be very helpful whether you're trailering or just in a tight space or whatever. And really great you have all all those. And this whole system just works really well. You can also download your own apps from the Google Play Store and have those natively run on here if you don't want to do the phone tethering for whatever reason. And so overall, yeah, a really nicely done screen. And I think the only things I will say is, like, to go and turn on your cooled seats, that takes 2 taps. Also, speaking of submenus, your headlight controls, like other new GM vehicles, are buried a couple layers deep in a sub menu. There is no switch to turn on your headlights here. So if you're a traditionalist, just a little bit of a learning curve there with that. Also, this screen is hooked up to a 16 speaker Bose stereo here in the Denalis. You'll go down to a 12 speaker stereo in the lower trims. I haven't had too much time to play around with the audio just yet to sample that, but these Bose systems in these GM vehicles are usually top notch, very well done. So I have no doubts this one's going to be really good with these Performance Series speakers. Moving on to storage spaces here in the Acadia. They did a pretty good job with that. So you have nice large pockets in the doors with a bottle holder. In the middle here, in the bottom, you first have this very large area, and it's nice you also have a power outlet there that's really only accessible probably on the passenger side because it's a little bit of a reach. Unfortunately though, the cutout for this bin isn't very large from the driver's seat here, and I can only reach really the front of this bin, and so I just wish that was opened up a little more to make it more usable. Also in this area, another minor complaint is that you have some very nice materials here, which is great. You have some like a little bit of a stitching pattern here, and it's a little bit of a vinyl-y kind of feeling for this material, but this is all hard. And then, like my knee where I'm sitting is either banging up against that hard surface or straight into this chrome, which everything in here, by the way, is it's all real authentic stuff. So you have the chrome, which a little squeaky in this one as well. Hopefully that's just this vehicle. Make sure you push and prod on everything to make sure it's all screwed together well. But outside of that, you have some real wood here, which has a beautiful grain to it. You can feel, and it's laser etched wood. Really high quality. You have the metal speaker grills, and again, all the stitching and the quilting. It all feels very, very nice. I just wish that, the knee area was a little more padded, and that's something you usually get in premium vehicles, and it's a little bit unfortunate that you don't get that here in this. Otherwise, though, as far as the top part of this storage bin, you'll see a wireless charging pad and another little pocket there that has a USB-A and USB-C jacks, 2 cup holders, and then the center armrest, which has a little bit of padding to it, but honestly is a little firm for my liking. You open that up and you will see a removable bin here, which is great, and also a nice large cubby underneath of that, and so a lot of good usable space in there. Hopping into the second row here in the Acadia, it's a really good amount of space, and with those seats slid all the way back, GMC does claim best in class second row legroom, and I have to say that me being 5'9" sitting behind myself, I have a good amount of legroom to spare there. Now, the compromise though is that they just let the seat slide way back so that the third row is really tight. I think that's how they're able to make that claim, because if you have the second row seat in a position where the third row actually has somewhat usable room for adults, I mean, it's going to be, I'd say, pretty average for this segment. Still a good amount of space nonetheless, but I think that's how they're getting that. I don't think it's really any extra length. Realistically speaking, it's just them playing around with, how much that seat can move. But it's great that seat can move back that much. If you do want to just prioritize this as a, 4-seater vehicle, you can do that. Also, by the way, it's worth mentioning, you can still get a bench in these. This Denali just has the captain's chairs, but these can seat up to 8, which is more than the past Acadia, I think, only went to 7. So you have 8 seats here, up to 8 seats. This one, of course, just seats 7. But great, you have that. As far as other stuff in that second row, there are also heated seats here in this one and for the Denali, and you'll see they have their own cup holders, as well as the other controls and power outlets down there as well. But sadly, they're only heated second row seats, and even some of the mainstream 3-row crossover competitors, some of the best ones out there, do have cooled second row seats, ventilated second row seats as well. And you don't have that option here. And this is not only, it's not like it's just like the Chevy competing with all the mainstream stuff, but this is supposed to be premium. And for this to not have stuff that mainstream competitors have, to me, is a big miss. I mean, this is the Denali. It should be the ultimate, and cooled seats should be a given in the second row. And I mean, even Palisade has heated third row seats. No such option here in this. So I think they really need to, bump up the amount of content you get here in this Denali if they want to truly have that top-notch kind of feel in here. You do have this beautiful panoramic roof, which does open up, which is great. You have roof-mounted air vents there as well, and their own pockets in the doors. And getting into the third row is really nice. So here in these, you do have a power sliding second row. Just press a button, and it tilts forwards. And the important thing here is that it also retains its shape, which means you can have a forward-facing car seat still in place there and still get access to the third row. There's a few others that do that in this segment, but a lot of others just kind of like collapse whenever you slide that second row forward, and you can't really do the car seat thing. So this is one of the few that still does do that. I think it's a very nice touch for families. But then once you're in that third row there, it's a good amount of space, again, depending on how flexible your second row occupants are there. Because with that seat, again, slid all the way back, I really can't sit back there, to be honest. And even with the seat slid to like a more middle position, I'm still basically, having one leg hanging out in the aisle there to make myself comfortable. So obviously, again, you can slide that second row up more and then give yourself some more space there. It's not the roomiest three row in this segment for sure, but certainly is a good, nice, usable third row. And they're comfy seats back there. They also have their own cup holders and USB-C jacks. The cargo space here in the Acadia is arguably where I think it gained the most space with this, growth. And that's because they say you have 80% or nearly 80% more cargo space with the third row in place than the last Acadia. So I mean, basically close to doubling the amount of space back there from prior Acadia. And I mean, it's a nice, I'd say compared to all the other mainstream three-row stuff, this is probably a tiny bit more space for sure with just the length. It just goes a little deeper there. Also, we'll see that whenever you open up the floor there, you have a nice deep bin that you can fit even like a carry-on size suitcase under the floor there, which is great extra bonus space. And even beneath that, I didn't pull it out, but there's a spare tire under there as well. So it's great that they still include a spare tire and still give you all that space under the floor. Really impressively packaged and a well done job as far as that goes. And so I think that's going to be one of the big selling points here of this, is just you have a lot of space back there. And I think that's, again, they chose to probably bump that up a lot more versus giving you a more roomy third row, which they could have probably done. But I think, again, third row is still totally fine and a really well done amount of cargo space there. But let's start up and go for a drive. The Acadia here just has the newer GM key here, the GMC logo on this one, and a little bit of metal there on the side, and just a plastic key. Nothing super nice, and honestly, it'd be nice to see a key that's a little bit more high-end feeling than, just basically the Chevy key with a GMC badge. But still nice and small and a pretty good key, so no complaints here. But anyway, it is, of course, keyless access, keyless entry, and push-button start. So just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off here in the 2024 Acadia Denali. So I only have a few minutes here to drive this vehicle. I did do a lot of time as a passenger today, but haven't had a ton of time to drive it myself. But what I can say is that it's a really smooth ride. Even on these 22-inch wheels, you would think, maybe it's going to be a little tough, especially since there is no adaptive dampers, there's no magnetic ride control or anything fancy like that. It's just passive dampers, but it does a really good job, and it does have a unique tune here for the Denali as far as the suspension goes. And these 22-inch wheels, they have unique tunes for all the various wheel packages you can get on these. So they're all going to feel a little different depending on what trim you have. But it's just, it's really been a nice, quiet, smooth vehicle we've been cruising around in this afternoon here. And it's also really nice and easy to drive. So you have great visibility here. The A-pillar is a little thick, but I haven't had an issue with it so far because the dashboard does come down nice and low, so it's not too bad. You also have, of course, all of the safety tech you can imagine, as well as all the different camera views and all that kind of stuff. So shouldn't be too bad, I don't think. And you have even a great view out of the back with the camera rear view mirror. So even if you have people in the third row, you'll have an unobstructed view here with the camera rear view mirror. And I'm also pretty impressed with the smoothness of this powertrain. It's a brand new powertrain here, really. It's a 2.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine paired up to an 8-speed torque converter automatic transmission. And it's been pretty responsive with giving downshifts. It has a nice medium amount of boost that comes on and allows you to get some nice acceleration even without having to wait for a downshift. I do have a sport drive mode, so I'll try that out here and do a quick little acceleration. Here we go. It's pretty good, so I'm not going to stick in it too long because I'm just on a residential road here, but it's pretty good. I'd say this motor doesn't feel super sporty, even in sport mode here. It's just going to be a good, strong motor from a hauling standpoint. And to me, it doesn't feel quite as fast, I think, as the numbers suggest. It does have top-notch horsepower and torque, 328 horsepower, 326 pound-feet of torque, which are basically class-leading for just a non-hybrid regular gas turbo engine. So, a really punchy amount of power, but to me, it doesn't feel quite as punchy as like the Mazda CX-90 with its, turbocharged inline-6 engines that do, similar kinds of power. Try another little acceleration here. Right, yeah, I mean, it's pretty good, especially the upper RPM. I think it likes to rip a little bit more, but it's funny. I stomped on it, and it said all-wheel drive recommended, change drive mode. So the funny thing about this vehicle is all-wheel drive is available, but it's not standard, which is surprising, because most others these days, it is just standard. All-wheel drive is still available. I mean, that's nice if you live in a place that doesn't get any weather and you're fine with front-wheel drive, I guess. But the funny thing is, it doesn't automatically switch into all-wheel drive. There's still a button here on the left-hand side, kind of hidden, honestly, just over here where you have to press to turn on all-wheel drive, which outside of GM, I don't think anybody else does that in a regular, you know, commuter vehicle these days. That's really odd to me, that it doesn't just intelligently switch on all-wheel drive whenever it senses some wheel spin there. And so yeah, it's nice you have that, though. It's available, of course, on all the trims, and there's also a more advanced all-wheel drive system for the AT4 version, and is going to be a little bit more advanced with, I believe, a twin clutch all-wheel drive system versus the simpler arrangement you have here in the other versions. They also increased the tow capacity here for the Acadias for 2024. They now tow 5,000 pounds, which is really nice, and that 5,000 pound rating, by the way, applies to all versions of the Acadia whenever you add on the tow package to enable that. But great that they all can do 5,000 pounds and you know, a good amount of towing these days. You know, most everything else tows right around this same amount, and so gonna be great for, you know, light duty hauling. So I mean, but otherwise, outside of that one, you know, odd little thing there, you know, it's just a really nice cruising vehicle. You know, we're doing about 35 here, and these roads are, you know, pretty well kept and all that, and very scenic, of course. But yeah, I think it's just a nice driving vehicle. I don't really have any complaints. I'm going to need to spend some more time in this, but let's go hop in the AT4 version and see how that drives. All right, so now we are in the AT4 version, and I'm using Super Cruise once again, which is available on all versions of the Acadia, by the way. You don't have to go for a top trim or any of these higher ones. Even the base elevation trim offers that. And so as far as we're doing like an auto lane change right now, which it does, it also does do trailering support, but whenever you do the trailering support, it doesn't do the auto lane change for that component with this specific integration. Other GM products can do both at the same time, but you lose the auto lane change when you're towing with the Acadia here. But otherwise, the great thing though is they've expanded Super Cruise availability, and so now instead of being about 400,000 miles of highway previously, now it's on stuff that's non-divided. So like this, you know, we still have a strip in the middle, but there's no physical barrier, and you know, we have access points and stuff, and previously you couldn't do Super Cruise on these types of roads. Now you can, and so they've expanded the mileage to I think about 750,000 miles of roadway now, and so it means that, you know, on these other roads here, it's not only just like these wider roads like this one, you can even have it on 2-lane back roads. Whatever stuff has been mapped, this is now capable of handling that, and so it's really a cool feature to be able to have, you know, not fully autonomous driving, but to have a lot of your driving be hands-free now, not just highway driving, and that's huge. It really feels like the future, and I know it's corny to say, but you know, when no one else does hands-free this extensively now, I mean, this is a clear GM advantage. If you're doing a lot of road tripping or just a lot of driving in general, to have Super Cruise take over and relieve you of some of those duties. Of course, you still have to be paying attention, you still have to be focused on the act of driving here, but you know, the difference between having your hands up here and having your hands down here doesn't seem like a wild difference, but after a couple of hours, you do feel more refreshed. You just feel less fatigued with Super Cruise. And so, you know, even though there's a little bit of a price premium here for the Acadias, you know, it's just, you know, for some people that might be worth it alone to go for, you know, one of these GM products, especially the Acadia here, just because that's something no one else offers, and it's a huge advantage for GM. And I've always said, ever since Super Cruise came out, it's been my favorite of the very few hands-free systems that are out there. And not only is it just good because there's not much competition, but it's just a really good system. It's intelligent with the way it kind of leans closer to the shoulder whenever you're near large vehicles, and kind of acts like a normal human being. And as far as, you know, whenever you do approach intersections, since now you will be seeing intersections when you're super cruising, you know, on these less main highways, we'll disconnect the Super Cruise. So whenever you come up to a red light, it wants you to take control to get through that intersection, because there's a lot of variables there, and it wants to have you be in control for those unknowns that it can't predict. And so you don't get Super Cruise through an intersection through a red light, but then once you are past the intersection, then it comes right back on and re-engages there for you. And so I think that's the smart way to do it as well. You know, they're not trying to do more than they're comfortable doing. They're not overly, confident of the system's capabilities. They say, hey, look, we know this is going to be a little bit of a higher risk situation going through a red light or going through, an intersection and traffic lights and all that. Let's make sure the driver is in control for that. And maybe someday we'll get to a point where it can handle the intersections as well. But I really respect their cautiousness and their responsible approach to this. Unlike some other companies, one in particular out there that, is very overly confident, regardless of, whether it can actually do that kind of stuff or not. I like that this is, a more responsible approach. Even if you don't go for the expensive Super Cruise option, the Acadia provides a pretty extensive list of standard safety features that includes adaptive cruise control still, plus blind spot monitoring with rear cross traffic alert and automatic rear braking, lane keep assist, automatic emergency braking, including in intersections, auto high beams, and more. The one thing that I'm really impressed by is that even though you have these all-terrain tires here, the ride is still nice and quiet in the AT4, and it's smooth. It's honestly probably even a little smoother than the others because you have the thicker sidewall there, and handling is pretty good in these too. Now again, it's a 3-row crossover. I'm not going to really critique the handling here because it's going to be in line with what you get from most others out there in this segment, but is nice and flat and pretty well controlled. The one other thing though that I'm noticing the more and more that I drive these Acadias is that the engine is a little coarse sounding. So if we go for acceleration again, it's just a little louder at times than some of the competitors. And it also feels like there's not a lot of boost down low. And so other turbocharged engines with some of the competitors do give you more punch in the lower RPMs. This feels like it still needs to do a downshift and get you some higher RPMs until, to actually give you the power that you're looking for there. So it's kind of interesting. Usually turbo motors don't need to work this hard to, get that kind of acceleration. And that's kind of one of the nice perks of these turbos. But this one seems like it's just sometimes, just a little iffy, not quite as polished as it should be. All right, so now we're trying out the off-road mode, which is one of the exclusive modes you get here with the AT4 version, and it allows you to, get everything a little looser here, and allows you to kind of play around with the back end and just, give you that extra slip that you're going to need to continue to have the traction and the momentum without the computer systems cutting back the power and, trying to dampen the experience. So it's a really fun mode to have here, again, only in the AT4. The other exclusive mode is the terrain mode, which is a low speed kind of crawling type of thing, and we were able to do that here, just going through some more challenging stuff. But out here on the this loose sandy kind of dirt here, it's really fun. And because the AT4 here, you have more ground clearance, and you also have this unique all-wheel drive system I mentioned earlier, where it has a twin clutch setup, and that allows this to have a little bit more torque control, where it's able to shift power from left to right in the back there, more so than just the simpler setup you have with the regular all-wheel drive system that's available in the Denali and the Elevation. And so it's fun. I mean, and with these all-terrain tires, obviously it does a good job of gripping, but it gives you the off-road fun you want. It's moving around here and tram lining in these little ruts and all that, but it's a really fun experience, and it's more capable. I think the AT4 is really one of the advantages here of the Acadia versus some of the other competitors, where they don't really have a dedicated off-road version. And again, this isn't going to be any kind of rock crawler. It's not going to be able to replace a Wrangler in your garage or anything, but the fact that it's able to do a little more than the average crossover, especially 3-row crossovers, I think is a really cool advantage here of the Acadia and these GM products in general that offer these more adventurous trims than most of the others do. The last couple of things to mention are fuel economy and pricing and how it compares to the competition. The EPA estimated fuel economy is 20 mpg city, 27 highway, and 23 combined for the front-wheel drive version, and that drops down to 19 mpg city, 24 highway, and 21 combined for the all-wheel drive version. These numbers are average for the segment, so it's fine. Just don't have the expectation that downsizing to a 4-cylinder engine is going to help you at all, with a Kia Telluride doing almost identical fuel economy numbers with its old V6, and Mazda's new turbo inline 6 even getting a few better MPG. And if you really want better efficiency, some competitors even offer hybrid and plug-in hybrid variants, something the GMC can't match. Now, as far as pricing and how it compares to the competitors there, these start at $43,995 for front-wheel drive, $2,000 more if you want all-wheel drive, and the fully loaded Denali that I drove went as high as $64,810. I really think the best value here is the base elevation trim, which at that $44,000 to $46,000 price tag gives you all the screens as standard, along with the 20-inch wheels, 360-degree camera, and heated steering wheel, which are three things that most others reserve for higher trims. Going up to the Denali gives you a few nice features and unlocks options like the panoramic sunroof, but honestly there's no way those few features and few different finishes are worth the nearly $20,000 upcharge, especially since it was still lacking things like those ventilated second row seats, and competitors that offer more features and luxury are $7,000 to $10,000 less, such as that Mazda CX-90 I mentioned earlier, along with the Toyota Grand Highlander, Kia Telluride, and Hyundai Palisade, which are all still the top vehicles in the segment in my mind. If you're interested in the extra capability of the AT4 or the more rugged look, it thankfully is priced more competitively at about $52,500, and that puts it about $2,000 under the top competitor in the rugged three-row segment, the Kia Telluride X Pro. The Telluride has a smoother V6 that feels stronger even if it has a little less power on paper, plus it can tow a little bit more and gives you features like those ventilated second row seats, so it's still my pick of the two. One comparison though where I think the GMC does win is compared to its platform mate, the Chevy Traverse, which starts a few grand less, but once you option it up to get the 20-inch wheels and the LT trim to make it comparable to that base elevation trim of the Acadia, you're at nearly $45,000 already anyway, and you still don't have the 360-degree camera or the leatherette seats, with the Chevy just having cloth. So I think the Acadia is the better deal there. And the final thing I'll add is that only the GMC and the Chevy offer Super Cruise, and while it is a nearly $3,000 option, if you do a lot of driving, especially on highways, an elevation trim at that $49,500 price tag with Super Cruise is a very compelling choice and is nice enough that it might be worth living without some of the competitors' extra features, because Super Cruise is just that big of a game changer. Overall though, outside of the impressiveness of Super Cruise, the 2024 Acadia is a fine option if you go for the Elevation or the AT4 in my opinion, especially if they're easier to find or if they can be had with a bigger discount compared to some of the other more hotter selling competitors. But to me, the Mazda CX-90, Toyota Grand Highlander, Kia Telluride, and Hyundai Palisade are all still more premium feeling, have more features and better powertrains, and their top trims all undercut that Denali's pricing by a significant amount. So while the 2024 Acadia is a great new competitor, it isn't one of the top ones in my opinion. So that's all of my thoughts on the GMC Acadia. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Big thanks to GMC for providing me with this opportunity to review the new Acadia for you guys, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.